Hello, my name is Dave Yeomans and I've been reading the Course in Miracles for 15 years. You possibly know me from the Miracle Worker magazine. I've had my name in the back for a number of years for running the group in Nottingham, or one of the groups that is. And I wanted to talk today about something that the Course teachings mention, which is blocks to realising our true connection. And one of the biggest blocks is fear of God. If you're very holy, then you fear God. And if you're very holy, God help you, because you're going to need it. I work with people. I do coaching and acupuncture. And health in body depends on health in mind. So the Course in Miracles fascinated me because it is a self-study course that leads to peace of mind, and from peace of mind the best kind of health that you can get flows. So when your mind is peaceful, you've got energy, you've got vitality, creativity, you become quite positive. Now, in order to have peace of mind, you must process your fears. And the Course is very clear about fears, that fears all come from one place, which is our ego. The ego is a bit like a kind of virus that gets downloaded into a computer, and it makes the computer not work properly. And the ego is a system of thinking that's based on fear. And so the Course says fear will never show us a way out of fear. So clearly the way out of fear is not listening to our ego. So because I work with people and I want to help them get better, I was given, I believe I was given by the Holy Spirit, a visualisation a few years ago. And this visualisation is one that I'm going to share with you now. And I'm going to run it past you and you can make your own minds up. Okay? Right. I want you to imagine that you're on the stage, and a big stage, and flash bulbs are going off and cameras are taking photos and people are clapping and cheering, and you're on the stage and you're receiving a check and a handshake, and you've just won the Nobel Prize for Science. Now you remember back in your laboratories the reason why you're getting these honours, and you think back in your laboratory there's this tank and there are creatures swimming around in the tank that never existed before. Now for the sake of this visualization, you've got to imagine that you're a genius. Okay, you're very, very intelligent, and you sat down and you calculated genetic codes and construction, bone structure and all this kind of stuff, and you created it from scratch. It never existed before. So you've created these creatures and they're exactly the way you meant them to be, because you calculated how they should be. Now these creatures are intelligent, they have a language, they can communicate with one another, and they can communicate with you, and you can communicate with them if they listen. What would you feel about them? What would you feel about them? What would you feel about them? Would you want to hurt them? Would you want to starve them? Would you want them to grovel every time you went in the lab? Would you want them to have any pain? I imagine you'd feel very good about them. I imagine you'd be proud of them. I think you'd love them. I think that you wouldn't let them starve. You'd want to give them food. You'd want to give them everything that they needed. I imagine that you wouldn't want them to have any pain. If some kind of bacteria got in the water, you'd want to give them medicine to clear it up. You'd want to fix it. You'd want to take care of them. Now the problem is that intelligent creatures like to tell stories. They like to make stories up. Human beings, we are story makers. We make stories to tell of our journey. And these creatures may have come together and created some stories about you, the scientists that created them. Because you're so intelligent, because you're so much more powerful, they may actually be afraid of you. And they may think that you've got a bad temper or something. And so one day when you walk in the lab, you find one of them's saying, "What do you want?" And you say, what do you mean, what do I want? And he says, "Well, you know, you give us all the food, you clean the water, you take care of us, we must owe you. What do we owe you?" What would you want from them? What would you want from them? Would you want anything from them? Now these little creatures, one of them might say, "Well, how about if I cut my flipper off and give you my flipper, and then I'll have a flipper less, but I'm willing to sacrifice it to please you." What would you say? My guess is you'd say, "I'd be very happy if you don't cut your flipper off, just leave it where it is." But they would still want to know what they owe you. But the problem is with owing that if they gave you anything, it would come from the tank. That's all they've got. And since you put everything in the tank, they'd only be giving you back what you gave them in the first place. So it would be absurd. Now one day you might walk into the room and one of them's kind of swimming around with a broken fin and he's going round in circles. And you say, "What's the matter?" And the creature says, "Oh, I don't want to trouble you. I don't want to ask you. You're the provider. You give us the food. You look after us. You clean the water. You know, you take away the bugs out of the water. I don't deserve any help." And you say, "Come on, tell me what happened." And the creature says, "Well, you know that fan thing that makes the air go round? I swam too close and I caught my fin in it. So it's my fault. I don't deserve any help." What would you say? What would you think? What would you feel? My guess is you'd want to help them. You'd want them to love themselves. You'd want them to be happy. You wouldn't want them to swim round in an injured way because they had an accident. What would you think? I guess by now you've figured out where this is all going. It says in the course that there is no cruelty in God and there is no cruelty in us. And I think when you tap into your heart, you start to remember what a loving God there really is, and how this idea that there's a cruel, demanding God that wants sacrifice is a nonsense. Thank you for listening. Namaste.